Good afternoon. It's Monday, the 13th of April. I'm Erin Viner. This is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. Washington and Jerusalem are continuing to duel over the framework nuclear agreement with Iran. In his latest thrust, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu foiled the challenge from U.S. President Barack Obama by citing alternatives to the current deal, while U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry parried with a declaration that the accord will make the world safer.
In the last few days, Iran has shown again why it can't be trusted. Iran insists on maintaining its formidable nuclear capabilities with which it could produce nuclear weapons. Iran insists on removing all sanctions immediately, and Iran refuses to allow effective inspections of all its suspect facilities. At the same time, Iran continues its unbridled aggression in the region and its worldwide terrorism in the world. So let me reiterate again the two main components of the alternative to this bad deal. First, instead of allowing Iran to preserve and develop its nuclear capabilities, a better deal would significantly roll back these capabilities. For example, by shutting down the illicit underground facilities that Iran concealed for years from the international community. Second, instead of lifting the restrictions on Iran's nuclear facilities and program at a fixed date, a better deal would link the lifting of these restrictions to an end of Iran's aggression in the region, its worldwide terrorism, and its threats to annihilate Israel. Iran needs a deal more than anyone. Instead of making dangerous concessions to Iran, now is the time for the international community to reassert and fortify its original demands for a better deal. We must not allow Iran, the foremost sponsor of global terrorism, to have an easy path to nuclear weapons, which will threaten the entire world.
What we have done shuts off the four principal pathways to a bomb for Iran in the Natanz facility, in the Iraq plutonium facility, in the Fordow underground facility, and also the covert program. We think that, we don't think, the science tells us that we have an ability to know what Iran is doing and to be able to shut off those pathways to a bomb. And that makes the world safer. They're going to say the things that they feel they need to say with respect to their deal at home. And all I can tell you is this. When we did the interim agreement, there were these same kinds of discrepancies, or spin, if you want to call it that, with respect to what the deal was or wasn't. But in the end, the deal was signed, and the deal has been agreed to and lived up to. No one contests that Iran has lived up to every component of that agreement, and the deal is what we said it was. Now, with respect to the fact sheet that we put out just yesterday, the Russians released a statement saying that the statement released by the United States is both reliable and factual. So I will stand by every word that I have uttered publicly, and I will be briefing the United States Congress in full, the House tomorrow, the Senate the next day, and we will lay out all of the details to them, some of which are obviously classified.
In the wake of the terror attacks in the Sinai Peninsula that claimed the lives of at least 13 people, Cairo has announced that those caught digging cross-border tunnels between Egypt and the Gaza Strip could face the maximum penalty of life in prison. IBA's Margot Dukevich brings us more in this report.
Terror has struck the Sinai Peninsula again, with at least 13 people killed and dozens wounded in separate bombing and shooting attacks at a police station, a military checkpoint and a military vehicle traveling on a highway in northern Sinai. A car bomb exploded yesterday outside the El Arish police station, killing at least 8 members of Egypt's security forces and a civilian, and injuring over 40 people, the country's health ministry said. Later, 6 army officers and soldiers were killed when their armored vehicle was attacked on the road between El Arish and Sheikh Zayed in northern Sinai, and shots were fired at soldiers manning a roadblock in Rafiah. Ansar Beit al-Maqdas, who swore allegiance to the Islamic State last year, claimed responsibility for the deadly attacks. The Sinai Peninsula has been the site of numerous attacks against army and police forces, and comes as the Egyptian army announces plans to reshuffle several of its senior commanders involved in spearheading the battle against terror groups operating in the Sinai. Since the ouster of former Muslim Brotherhood President Mohammed Morsi in the summer of 2013, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi vowed to crack down on terror groups operating in the Sinai and launched a number of military campaigns against insurgency, declaring it a national emergency. Just days ago, a Cairo court handed down a death sentence to Mohammed Badi, spiritual leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, accusing him of inciting chaos and violence in the 2013 protests that rocked the capital when Morsi was ousted. The court ruling is expected to add more fuel to an already volatile situation. Aside from the Sinai Peninsula, the country's capital is also frequently targeted by terror. Last week, a police officer was killed and 3 policemen injured when a bomb exploded on a bridge in Cairo. In another attack, 2 bombs exploded near a Cairo police station, causing no casualties. The terror rocking the country, with a population of some 90 million, has already played havoc with its economy and could impact Egypt's neighboring countries if it remains unchecked. Margot Dudkevich, IBA News.
At least 45,000 Holocaust survivors here in the country live under the poverty line on less than 3,000 shekels a month. This is according to the annual report released today by the Foundation for the Benefit of Holocaust Victims in Israel. Of the total population of 189,000 elderly survivors, 2/3 are women, and the average age is 83 and a third years old. 45% complain of isolation, and 27% say that they don't have enough money to heat their homes during the winter. Over the past year, sadly, there's been a drastic increase in the community's mortality rate, with 40 survivors dying every day, with an average of 14,200 deaths each year. As part of the commemorations marking 70 years since the Holocaust, survivors of Buchenwald laid wreaths at what was the Third Reich's largest concentration camp on German soil. The complex was opened by the SS in 1937 near the picturesque city of Weimar. More than 56,000 Jews, Roma gypsies, homosexuals, Soviet prisoners, and resistance fighters from Scandinavia and France died there of torture, medical experiments, starvation, and disease. 80 of the elderly survivors came to the camp from Europe, the United States, and Israel. On the sidelines of the ceremony, they later joined U.S. Ambassador John B. Emerson and several of the American Army veterans who helped to liberate the camp 7 decades ago on April 11, 1945. A third of the 112,000 surviving people freed that day were Jewish, although just 3 days before the arrival of the American troops, the SS sent 28,000 predominantly Jewish inmates to their deaths on marches to other camps further away from the front. Hungarians remembered the victims of the Holocaust at a mass rally in Budapest, where organizers warned against the surge of far right-wing anti-Semitism in the East European nation. Only 180,000 of the pre-World War II Jewish population that had been 800,000 survived the German occupiers, who were assisted by Hungary's own Arrow Cross Nazi Party to annihilate nearly 70% of the Jewish community. Since the war, anti-Semitism has remained a significant problem in Hungary, and a recent poll revealed that nearly a third of the population openly express hatred toward Jews. Organizers of the Budapest rally say that they came in a show of support for the upcoming March of the Living to Auschwitz-Birkenau death camps. The annual pilgrimage coincides with by-elections in the western town of Topolka, where opinion polls indicate a victory for the right-wing extremist Jobbik faction, which would transform the former fringe group into a serious political contender. In an address to those gathered at the head of the World Jewish Congress, Ronald Lauder accused Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán of not taking a strong enough stance against the hate-mongering party.
Often the government does not go against Jobbik, and anti-Semitism has no room in any country, particularly a country like Hungary. And if the government does not fight against it, in a way they almost are agreeing to it. I feel that's important the government fight against it. Jobbik is a very great danger for Hungary.
Far right-wing French politician Jean-Marie Le Pen will not run in the upcoming regional elections, standing down in a high-profile feud with his daughter over the future of their National Front party. He incurred the wrath of Marine Le Pen by repeating an assertion that the Nazi gas chambers were a detail of history, followed by his defense of French World War II leader Philippe Pétain, who collaborated with the Nazis. Even though he agreed to step down from the party that he founded, Le Figaro today cited statements from Le Pen, throwing an additional jab at his daughter by declaring his preference that his granddaughter Marion assume his position. Marine Le Pen has led the anti-immigrant party to electoral successes in recent years and has undertaken efforts to clean up its racist image. She announced her opposition to her 86-year-old father's bid in the regional elections as a disciplinary measure for his anti-Semitic and other offensive remarks. Turning to coalition-building efforts, and after a 4-hour meeting between Prime Minister Netanyahu and Moshe Kahlon last night, it now seems that the Kulanu party will receive the Finance, Housing, and Environmental Protection ministries in the next government. But it's important to remember that nothing is final yet. Here with more is IBA's political correspondent, Eli Wogelenter.
Last night's meeting focused on resolving Kulanu's demands with an emphasis on the professional tools that Kahlon has been seeking in order to carry out his promised economic reforms, particularly in housing. Prime Minister Netanyahu was already on record pledging that he will name Kahlon finance minister. Likud officials were quoted saying that Kulanu would not receive the chairmanship of the Knesset Finance Committee, one of the key professional tools demanded by Kahlon, since that position has already been promised to Moshe Gafni of United Torah Judaism. But while Kahlon has given up his demand for the leadership of that committee, he is standing strong in his demand for the Interior Ministry's planning administration. Number 5 on the Kulanu list, Rachel Azaria, said Kahlon can't effect change without the positions of authority.
The Kulanu party was established to make sure that we can handle the socioeconomic issues in Israel. And now, after we've gotten 10 mandates, we know our responsibility is to make sure that we can make it happen. To make it happen, what we need is a toolbox of all the different ministers or the different responsibilities to make sure that we'll be able to lower the prices of housing and the different issues that we have committed to our voters and also to the rest of the 8 million residents, citizens of Israel.
After his meeting with Kahlon, Netanyahu met with Aryeh Deri, head of the Shas party, who is also vying for control over the Interior Ministry in its entirety. But Likud is balking. The Prime Minister's focus on talks with the Haredi parties and Kulanu has irked the leaders of Bayit Yehudi and Yisrael Beitenu, who have been complaining that negotiations with them have been put on the back burner. One of the problems regarding Bayit Yehudi is that it is demanding a veto on religion and state issues in the next governing coalition. That would not jive with the demands of the Haredi parties. Bayit Yehudi fears that Shas and United Torah Judaism will try to reverse some of the reforms instituted in the last Knesset, like the conversion reform, the so-called Sohar law, which was passed in the last government, which allows municipal rabbis to establish conversion courts outside the purview of the chief rabbinate's conversion system. The measure did not pass as a law in the Knesset, but as a government directive, and so it can be overturned by a simple cabinet vote in the new government. And that is something Shas and UTJ are hoping to do. Aaron?
Thanks for that report. And in other news, a general strike was declared today in the Arab town of Kfar Kana after overnight riots broke out when security forces demolished an illegally constructed home. 6 residents, including the head of the town's local council, were lightly hurt in those clashes. Dozens of residents gathered at the scene in attempts to prevent the dismantling from being carried out, while shouting Allahu Akbar and that the police were terrorists. In efforts to disperse the rioters, police used tear gas, stun grenades, and fired rubber bullets. Reality television star Kim Kardashian, her superstar rapper husband Kanye West, their daughter North, and Kim's sister Khloe checked into the David Citadel Hotel here in Jerusalem a short time ago after landing in Israel for a private visit after a trip to the Kardashians' ancestral homeland of Armenia. Kim and Kanye will be followed around with a camera crew as their visit is documented for her family's program, Keeping Up with the Kardashians. The reality TV star has more than 30 million followers on Twitter, nearly the same number on Instagram. The couple say that they came to the holy sites to visit holy sites here in Jerusalem, and they have hired security personnel who specialize in celebrity tours. And although it wasn't officially announced, it is believed that the real purpose of the couple's mission here is to have their nearly 2-year-old daughter baptized at the Cathedral of St. James in the Armenian quarter of Jerusalem's Old City. After their 2-day stay here in Israel, the entourage is slated to head off to Jordan. The former chairman of the IBA group, Nochi Donkner, is denying charges that he manipulated the company's shares, and he blamed IBA's collapse on the reform of the cellular telephone market by former communications minister Moshe Kahlon. Donkner made the claims as he took the witness stand in the Tel Aviv District Court at the start of the defense phase of his trial. He faces securities fraud charges, as well as misleading investors in a prospectus and committing a breach of financial reporting obligations with Itai Strum, who is the owner of the Swiss-Israeli ISP financial services brokerage firm. Another factory in the south is in danger of closing. About 100 employees at the Extra Plastic factory in Sderot are now waiting for a decision from a liquidator who has been charged with determining the company's future. The business first opened its doors back in 1960, and many workers say that they have few other prospects if it shuts down, that they fear that they will be forced to face the same fate as hundreds of others who have recently lost their jobs when other industries in the area closed down. Turning now to American politics, and after months of speculation, Hillary Clinton has officially entered the race for the 2016 presidential elections. The former Secretary of State declared her bid in a YouTube video, launching an aggressive campaign that many believe will secure her nomination as the Democratic candidate. Reporter Alexandra Jen has that story.
Would you please raise your right hand?
From First Lady to New York Senator to U.S. Secretary of State, the Chicago native emerged as a front-runner for 2016 President of the United States. The social media-friendly female candidate posted a YouTube video to announce her bid, profiling a diverse group of working-class Americans, all in pursuit of the American dream. Hillary introduces herself as one of them, with hopes of being the people's champion as president. Clinton has plans to jumpstart her campaign on the ground in Iowa as soon as Tuesday, focusing much of her attention on garnering the vote of the middle class. Although Republicans have a quickly growing number of contenders, it appears that Clinton may have a smooth ride to Democratic candidacy with a lack of opponents. The 67-year-old has come a long way since she pulled out of the presidential primaries in 2008, losing the nomination to President Barack Obama. While some of her initial campaign slogans echo those of the past.
And I suppose it's only fair to say, don't you someday want to see a woman president of the United States of America?
The woman we see in front of us has gained a great deal of experience since her 2008 campaign. She has a 4-year stint as Secretary of State on her resume, with a record as the most traveled one to date. The former First Lady also comes equipped with a strong campaign team, some of whom helped secure a win for President Obama in 2008. Most importantly, she has good momentum and is strongly bankrolled. Jeb Bush, perhaps the most formidable potential Republican candidate, has already taken to social media to criticize Clinton's bid, tweeting, "We must do better than Hillary." He also released a YouTube video speaking out against the Democrats and connecting Clinton with the failed government policies of Obama's terms. Additionally, Kentucky Senator and Republican presidential candidate Rand Paul calls Clinton the worst of the Washington machine and questions her commitment to women's rights. President Obama voiced his support of Clinton in his news conference at the American Summit.
She was an outstanding Secretary of State. She is my friend. I think she would be an excellent president.
The former New York senator, who once coined the phrase, "Women's rights are humans' rights, and humans' rights are women's rights," is already receiving praise from fellow women.
She's worked very hard to get to where she's at, and I believe there should be a woman president.
With others expressing doubt, particularly in the wake of her email scandal, where she privatized official public emails. As for Clinton's knowledge of the Middle East, as Secretary of State, she was involved in brokering a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Gaza in 2012. She also had her hand in imposing sanctions on Iran with regards to a nuclear deal. Since leaving office, there have been negative developments in both areas. A strained relationship between the U.S. and Israel will force Clinton to make some tough policy positions. There is a very long way to go for the presidential race, but as for now, Hillary Clinton is the one to watch. Alexandra Jen for IBA News.
Now taking a look at local finance, and the shekel today put in a mixed performance, as did share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. Here's a look at the afternoon numbers. Though there were a few sporadic rays of sunshine today, it does remain unseasonably cold. Precipitation in the north has been particularly heavy in the north over the past 72 hours, and at least 20 centimeters of snow have accumulated on Mount Hermon in the Golan Heights. The highest peak in the Upper Galilee, Mount Meron, is also frosted in white. According to the Israel Meteorological Service, there were only 2 other occasions over the past 65 years that it's been this cold this time of year, once in 1990 and last in 1997. This year's storm was caused by a low-pressure system that occurred unseasonably late. And it's not over yet. The IBA weather team says that there will be a little more light rain tomorrow morning, and that temperatures throughout the day will remain lower than normal for this time of year. Here's the forecast at home and abroad over the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. I'll be back at this desk tomorrow. Hope to see you then. I'm Erin Viner, wishing you a wonderful evening, and shalom from Jerusalem.